Well, thank you both for that sobering account. It's clear that you've both lived it and are following it very, very deeply. Thanks for your contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for all of your amazing questions. I feel like a piano player who's managing many tunes here. Let me try and group these together, and I'll put these up for both of you to talk. There's a lot of questions here, indeed, on the significance of the Hamas-Fatah reconciliation. And this is, I think, a good one to start with in terms of asking you both to comment on what this means, in addition to what you've said already, for the future moving forward. And there are so many dimensions to this. So let me just throw up a couple of them. One is that, perhaps for you, Omar, to address this, can it actually work? Since 2007, there have been 3 other initiatives to try and reconcile Hamas and Fatah. 2007, 2012, and one other in between, Doha, Cairo, and Riyadh, I think. So why is it going to be different this time around? And can Fatah and Hamas genuinely share power and then unite under one banner? That's to you, Omar. Menachem, you've spoken to the fact that the Prime Minister of Israel has condemned the reconciliation agreement proposal. Mm-hmm. He's not alone, of course, in reflecting not only Israel's view of Hamas, but it's a terrorist organization according to US law and the European Union. If Hamas and Fatah do reconcile, how will the European Union relate to this new Palestinian entity? So let's just start with those two. Over to you, Omar.
I think that vis-a-vis Hamas-Fatah reconciliation, some of the kinds of problems that have arisen in the past that have been hurdles to either achieving an agreement or, when an agreement has been achieved, making it stick, have attended 3 main issues. The first is how to manage the security sphere, and in particular, the question of prisoners, political prisoners, particularly in the West Bank. And that's been an issue in part because of the love triangle that exists here with Israel at times being, or actually at all times, I suppose, being very adamant that there was a choice to be made between its love and Hamas's. So the security question was a first issue. Dividing up, allocating power between the 2 movements in a way that would be equitable, in a way that would allow Hamas to feel not like a junior partner, but like a full partner, has been a second issue, with Fatah officials, I think, not really reconciling themselves in a serious way to the idea of sharing power with Hamas. And then I think that the third issue has been external interference beyond Israel, looking at the United States and the European Union, and the conditionalities that the United States hoisted upon the quartet, i.e. the unofficial peace coordination group. I'm not even sure how to call it anymore, between the Russian Federation, the US, the European Union, and the United Nations Secretariat. Those requirements ended up creating some real pressures that within the Fatah movement were exploited by those who were opposed to reconciliation. Now, my sense is that going forward, there is room to be hopeful in the sense that, while security cooperation continues, I think that the stakes have changed to some extent, not entirely, because it remains what underpins the Palestinian Authority. If it goes, the entire dynamic changes. But I think Mahmoud Abbas feels much less pressure than he would have felt a year or 3 years ago to keep Hamas militants in jail. Secondly, I think the Fatah has been placed in a position of needing Hamas at this juncture, of needing to legitimate and refresh itself following this debacle of the last number of months. And even though I think most Palestinians support the steps that the PLO has taken with respect to these negotiations, I think most Palestinians would have been felt betrayed by a capitulation of the kind that Kerry seemed to be asking Abbas to deliver. I think that those feelings don't last very long, and there is a need for a re-legitimation of Palestinian institutions, and this provides an opportunity to do it. So I think there's real possibility there. And third, I have the sense that we will see the European Union break ranks with the United States with respect to this unity agreement. And I think we can also expect some interesting fireworks on the Arab side. I think most people are supporting this in theory, but Hamas's links to the Muslim Brotherhood create some complicated dynamics there.
First, I think that Hamas and Fatah can agree on the establishment of a joint government of experts, technocrats. It is possible. It is possible because even today in the West Bank, the PA is ruled by a government of technocrats and not politicians. So they can agree, and this can help the EU to establish a policy of wait and see. I would like to say something about Europe in general, not only the EU. Europe is divided inside the EU and beyond the EU. East European countries support the United States fully. But let's look on non-EU countries. Norway and Switzerland manage direct negotiation with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. There's also Spain inside the EU, but Spain is a special case. So there are key European players that keep open channel with Hamas and acknowledge that Hamas must be engaged, and Hamas is not the same organization as it was when the movement established and the Islamic Charter was accepted, that since coming to power, Hamas changed, and Hamas can even go further in changing attitude and perhaps accepting in a way or another the two-state solution. Not unhappily, but de facto accepted. So most probably what I see is that the Europeans will say, okay, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see if the Palestinians agree, Fatah Hamas, to establish the government, who will be in this joint government, and in particular, what will be the government platform. In previous negotiations and previous reconciliation negotiations, the sides agreed that Mahmoud Abbas will form up the platform, which means that he will not break up the relations with the European Union. And the European Union, as well as the United States, by the way, faces another problem. if they stop funding the PA as an act of punishment, okay, then the PA collapses. If the PA collapses, it does not serve the European and the American interest in stability. It creates a chaos. Neither Israel, nor United States, nor EU wants chaos to prevail there. We have enough chaos in the region. We don't need one more. So just, taking a revenge and punishing the joint government by closing down all funds, this is self-punishment. It creates more problem than solutions. It's like, a person that is so angry on his face that cuts his nose. It's useless. I assume that the EU knows this. They will wait and see which kind of a government and the platform. I must say that the Israeli decision from this afternoon to not to transfer money to the PA creates for Israel much more problems. Because, for instance, the Palestinian police can find itself without money to buy gas for the cars. So the Palestinian police cannot function. Who will suffer from it? Israel. But Israel was so frustrated this afternoon, the mini cabinet was so frustrated that they were very emotional, and the decision were taken from the stomach, not from the brain.
Thank you, Menachem. I'd like now to talk to a series of questions that have come up in relation to the relationship between the communities themselves, not just between the PA and the Israeli government, but the extent and breadth of relationships ongoing between Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, and with Israelis. In that vein, a couple of questions around that. Are there still interactions, and how are they proceeding? How do the two communities view each other in the context of the recent talks, and what may come beyond? Perhaps, Menachem, if you could address that first, and then Omar, in framing your response, could you talk to two other dimensions or aspects, one being, is it plausible, similar to the Geneva Accord of October 2003, that the communities outside of their political leaders can push or encourage steps towards some kind of agreement? And secondly, on the Palestinian side, where is the next generation of leaders, and are they there? Where are they coming from, or do they have to be released from jail? Thank you.
Unfortunately, the relations and the meetings between Israeli civil society members and Palestinian civil society members are very few. Due to the escalation of the conflict, expansion of settlements, the BDS, the boycott movement, and anti-normalization movement in Palestine, and lack of interest in the Israeli side, lack of trust in the Israeli side. Each meeting is quite an operation. The Israelis cannot cross into the Palestinian areas by law, actually. The Palestinians are also prevented from crossing into the state of Israel. There are few meetings in Jerusalem. Other meetings are abroad. Geneva Initiative organizes meetings between minister assistant, Knesset member assistant, Palestinian parliament assistants, or between young journalists on both sides, seminars, or between mayors and heads of city councils on both sides. But there are very few, let's say 10 per year maximum, and always abroad, not in the region. This is this is really a problem. I don't know how to overcome it, but definitely what is needed is to bring to the attention the voice of and the concerns of the average citizen. This is very crucial to any negotiator or any mediator. This must be, the Israelis are, the Palestinian daily life and suffer is not in the mind of the Israelis. The Israelis does not see them at all, stop seeing them also in the streets. Sometimes the Israeli forces, police, border police, army humiliates the Palestinians, and the Israelis are not aware of this at all. What does it take to travel from for a Palestinian to travel from one place to another place and cross this and that checkpoints, or to meet an Israeli soldier? So this is really a problem, and this is also one of the differences between the 90s and today. During Oslo period, with all the problems, many more meetings happened between the two sides. Unfortunately, these meetings were, or these meetings did not lead to understanding. It reproduced the conflict rather than meeting, but at least when each side shouted on the other side, at least some understanding, some interaction, some awareness emerged and happened there. We don't have it anymore. The only one Israeli sector that goes into the West Bank cities, and this sector is allowed by law, are Israeli Palestinians, Israeli citizens of Palestinian origin, Israeli Arabs, so-called. They go there very often, but they are not part of the Israeli Jewish community, and therefore the Jewish community is keeping distance from the Palestinians, unfortunately.
In Arabic, the expression is not absence makes your heart grow fonder, but absence makes your heart grow colder, which I think is apt in this context. I think separation, particularly through infrastructure, but also, as Menachem points out, through law, has undermined the possibilities for both mutual understanding at a general level and the empathy that would facilitate that, and also opportunities for joint action to pursue either specific activities, protests, etc., or a broader political vision. Having said that, I do want to offer two caveats. I think we saw a few years back some interesting movement, especially in the context of protests around Israeli evictions of Palestinians in East Jerusalem. We saw, on a small scale, some re-energization of the Israeli left, particularly the far left, I would say, and some first kind of green shoots of re-established links between the two sides. Unfortunately, it just hasn't seemed sustained, and I think the barriers that they face are formidable. I'm not cynical about those efforts, but I think that they will be difficult to pursue. Secondly, there's an interesting movement substantively, which Menachem and I were discussing, and he's, I think, concerned about the way that it's unfolded. But called Two States, One Homeland, that is premised on a reimagination of the two-state solution, premised on an idea of partition without separation, i.e. you have two states, you have sovereign self-determination for two peoples, but it's not built on the idea of separating the two peoples, but instead on the idea of open borders and interaction. There's a lot more I could say about it substantively, but what's interesting to me is that there are some interesting advocates of it on both sides. I don't know, again, that it has coalesced or is anywhere close to coalescing into a movement, which is a source of frustration. And it'll take some time for it to get there. But I heard a lot of enthusiasm from a few people who I think are intellectually really engaged, and an even smaller but no less important group of people who are politically engaged about that. So I think there are opportunities, but I think that they are getting very significantly circumscribed. With respect to the next generation of Palestinian leaders, it's a good question. I think that the immediate next generation, i.e. those who might succeed President Abbas, I think that that's a really difficult question. There are a few interesting people from within the security sphere, and interesting doesn't mean good, as we all know in the United States. I think that there are sort of one of the main people often spoken about is Marwan Barghouti, who's in jail, as was alluded to in the question. And I think releasing him from jail would do interesting things to Palestinian politics, because he is a unifying figure in a range of different ways. I don't see that happening. I think that Mohammed Dahlan, who is sort of offered up by some and by many Gazans as an exciting new alternative for Palestine, is in a range of different ways a deeply divisive figure. And I think that some of the more conventional folks within the security services, Jibril Rajoub being one example, would fail to capture imagination. And so I do think we're facing a bit of a succession crisis. In terms of the generation after that, it's going to be contingent upon Fatah and Hamas both opening up their party structures to more mobility, so that the younger guard in each of them have a sense that they can participate and shape the movement, which is something, I don't have many contacts in Hamas any longer, but I know from young folks in Fatah that there is profound frustration about the lack of openings on that front. And that has to change before a new leadership can emerge.
Thank you, Omar. Ladies and gentlemen, we've really only got time for two broad questions, but I encourage you to hang around afterwards. And Omar and Menachem will kindly agree to make themselves available for some of the amazing questions which I won't be able to get to tonight. But given your vast experience, both of you, going back for a decade and a half at least now, and the comments that you made about the current process that's terminated a few hours ago, it would appear. What next? This process was led by a Secretary of State, by a president in his second term with seemingly nothing to lose, who didn't quite invest, to put it mildly, following a formula that seemed tired and destined to lead to no result. So would it make sense perhaps for the EU to step back and for the US to step back, or the EU to step forward, or for the US to recalibrate, reboot, rethink? How would one go about seriously reinvigorating a new US-led process, and what might it actually look like? And I just ask that you both answer that one crisply, please. Secondly, an oldie but a goodie. Camp David 2000, you both advised on that one. And I have an excellent question concerning that, which I'll read verbatim. The Camp David talks 2000 are often discussed in regards to the offer supposedly given by Israeli Prime Minister Barak, 94%. Was it really 94%? Please speak to whether this number is accurate or not, and why such an offer would have been refused and indeed not even have received a counter-offer from the Palestinian side. So, Menachem, why don't you decide which one you'd like to take, and then Omar, you can do the other one.
Great.
Okay, I will take the. Well, he is a U.S. citizen, so he will deal with his government. I will deal with the Barak government. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. 94% in Camp David, never. In Taba, it was Israel proposal, a territorial proposal was something between 4 and 6%. So it's coming close to 94%, but the 94% concept does not take into account Jerusalem and the Jordan Valley. Jerusalem was not included, or is not included in the 4 or 6%. Jordan Valley, under the security arrangements, special security arrangements, the Israeli proposal was putting Palestinian sovereignty as a joke on the Jordan Valley. So Israel succeeded, and from the text of the question, it's very clear, Israel succeeded to manage a very good PR campaign, coloring the Palestinians as refuseniks, but this is very wrong historically. Even in Camp David, the Palestinians presented counter proposals in a very bad manner, with many negotiation mistakes and flaws and divisions and so on. They played their cards very badly. The Israelis were much more qualified and professional in playing their cards and blaming the Palestinians. And the Israelis were helped by President Clinton, that also blamed the Palestinians, and very wrongly, not rightly. The Palestinians always presented counter proposals, sometimes even few counter proposals. At the moment, there is not only a Palestinian counter proposal, there is an all Arab and even all Muslim counter proposal that Israel even did not reject because it was not brought to the cabinet for a discussion. The Arab League peace plan never discussed in the Israeli cabinet. Okay? So, and this tells something. Israel never, even Bar Ilan speech of Bibi Netanyahu, Bar Ilan speech never approved, Bar Ilan guidelines never approved by the Israeli government. Never. It is private policy of the prime minister, never approved by the government. Unlike the Arab peace plan proposal, which was also approved by the Organization of the Muslim Countries. So, but public opinion shape is something different than reality.
Thank you.
I know I shouldn't do this, but just to add one thing to Menachem's very thoughtful intervention. 4 to 6% may seem like not so much until you look at where it is. Think about 4 to 6% of California. It could include all of the Bay Area, all of San Diego, Marin County. Maybe we're not so worried about Los Angeles, but and in this context as well, where the 4 to 6% was mattered much more to us than the number. Had Israel been concerned about remote parts of the southeastern West Bank, we would have been much less concerned than the areas that were at issue, which were central to our development agenda, as well as had great effect on Palestinian contiguity and economic opportunities. So putting that to the side, an American-led diplomatic effort, I'll just make 2 points on this front. The first is that I'm not sure that an American-led effort is what we need at this juncture. I think there is an argument that could be made for it, that could be made for saying, all right, well, the United States still has not put its cards on the table with respect to a proposal, and perhaps at last it should, which is what the New York Times has urged. And were I not so fearful of what that proposal would be in view of what I've seen over the last 6 months, I would say, yes, by all means. But I don't have a lot of confidence in this administration on that front. So I'm not sure that a US-led effort makes good sense. That said, what I would like to see is the United States to be less assertive in blocking efforts by others. And I think there are 2 specific things that might be useful steps in the right direction. The first is for the Security Council to look at this question. I think there are some issues with sequencing with respect to this, but I think that a set of parameters issued by the Security Council could be an important thing to place on the record and could play a role in bringing the parties' positions back within a sort of manageable sphere, and maybe also create a foundation for creating disincentives for continuing the occupation down the line. So I think that that could be a constructive step. Secondly, I think, while I don't think Palestinian accession to multilateral treaties, including the Rome Statute of the ICC, is likely to be completely transformative, I do think that trying to facilitate in a range of different fora, or I should say, coming back to the United States, not blocking efforts in a range of different fora, whether it is the United Nations General Assembly or the other UN agencies where issues are arising, whether it be about telecoms and the ITU or about cultural property in UNESCO. Not blocking efforts to address these issues there, not using our influence to discourage European states from taking principled positions with respect to the settlements. Those kinds of steps, I think, stepping back, in other words, could be very valuable at this juncture and send an important lesson not only to the Israeli government, but to the Israeli people about what the consequences could be of not acting responsibly at this juncture.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed that illuminating discussion. I neglected at the start to make a few thank yous that are really appropriate for tonight. Both Omar and Menachem are here courtesy of the International and Area Studies Department and the Peace and Conflict Studies Department. And you're all here in this magnificent venue courtesy of iHouse, which has shown a wonderful commitment to having people like our guests and to continuing the discussion on these issues. But I'd particularly like to single out the Olive Tree Initiative and its chapter here on UC Berkeley, which has moved mountains actually in trying to get a discussion happening on campus that is quarantined somehow from the hurly-burly of what does surround this issue. Through their efforts, they've got the first course being taught on the conflict for nearly a decade, and they have a desk out the front there where they've got some information, and they're currently raising funds to send a group of Cal students to Israel, Palestine and Jordan over the summer. So I do encourage you to stop by there and to make a contribution. It's something we want to continue here moving forward because that's the kind of place that Cal is. And we should all remember that. But I think we've got a couple of gifts, but let's bring those forward. And before I sound the final gong and allow you to approach.
Thank you. Thanks. It's lovely.
Thank you, Lillian. Thanks very much. So I hope you enjoyed this evening, and please join me in thanking our guests for tonight. Thanks.